This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, it being 4:00, this is the regular meeting of the West Basin Engineering and Operations Committee and a special meeting of the Board of Directors so that the board can participate in the Engineering and Operations Committee discussions. And with that, I will call the meeting to order. First item up is determination of a quorum. And Mr. General Manager, do we have a quorum?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, I'll run through a roll call real quick. The first Director Harold Williams.
Here.
Chairman Desi Alvarez.
Here.
Alternate Director Scott Houston. Not here. He did let us know that he was not going to be able to attend the meeting right away, so he might join us in the middle of the meeting. Director Don Deere.
Here.
Director Gloria Gray. And she also, I believe, notified us that she was not going to be able to attend. So we do have a quorum.
Okay, well, thank you. Next item is public comments. Are there any members of the public that have indicated they would like to address the committee?
Chairman Alvarez, we have not actually received any through our system or via email, but I do recognize that we do have a couple members of the public here today joining us virtually. So if anybody would like to speak during public comment, please add your name in the comment section and we can queue you up. Mr. Chairman, I do not see any.
Okay, and then we will move on to the next item, which is presentations.
Chairman Alvarez, today we do not have any presentations, but I did want to make one note from staff. It has been requested by the chairman, yourself, for a presentation related to recycled water, specifically related to facilities co-located at the Hyperion reclamation plant. Staff is in the process of producing that presentation, and we hope to bring it to you in the near future, potentially at the full board meeting at the end of this month. So staff just wanted to point that out, but at this point today, we do not have any presentations.
Okay, well, thank you. And then we will move on to the action calendar. And the first item up is item 5A. And Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce that item?
Yes, Chairman Alvarez. As you mentioned, item 5A is a funding request for service connection WB-23 relocation. This item is related to have authorize the General Manager to have Metropolitan Water District develop a bid package for the relocation of a potable water service connection. Today we have Frank Fuchs, our Operations Supervisor, here to present this item.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, directors. If I can please refer you to page 3 of your board packet. Again, the purpose of this board memo is to request approval for additional funding of a project to relocate a Metropolitan Water District potable water service connection that serves Golden State Water Company in Culver City. And I would like to highlight that this project is fully funded by Golden State Water Company. All Metropolitan Water District costs associated are passed on to Golden State Water. Back in 2018, Golden State Water Company requested that the existing service connection WB-23 be relocated from the current Metropolitan Water District Culver City pipeline feeder to a separate feeder identified as a supported feeder. To provide a little bit of a background, Golden State currently has a total of 3 potable water service connections that serve Culver City, and they are all served from the same Culver City feeder. And in order to have backup supply when the Culver City feeder needs to be shut down, Golden State Water Company requested that this project to relocate the WB-23 service connection to a different feeder, again, the Sepulveda feeder. A cost estimate of the project is shown in Exhibit B of the board memo, and Metropolitan Water District has been charging for tasks as the project progresses. And again, all these costs are passed through to Golden State Water Company. The estimated project cost is $3,236,800. And to date, West Basin has passed through payment the Metropolitan Water District in the amount of $590,200 for the study phase, preliminary design, and the final design of the project. Recently, Metropolitan Water District indicated that the construction work would be bid out instead of constructed by Metropolitan Water District staff as they had initially estimated. Unfortunately, Metropolitan Water District doesn't believe that they will have the staff available to implement that work in-house. So as a result, there will be an additional cost to update the design drawings and also develop the bid documents for a total of an estimate $77,000. In addition, a valve that has a long lead time will also be purchased for an additional $20,270, and therefore Metropolitan Water District is requesting an additional $97,270 for developing the bid documents and also for the purchase of this valve. And I also want to mention that Golden State Water Company has already provided a payment to West Basin for that full amount. So now I'll read the recommendation. The recommendation is that the board authorize the general manager to have Metropolitan Water District develop a bid package for the relocation of potable water service connection WB23 and purchase a valve with payment of $97,270 Metropolitan Water District to be fully funded by Golden State Water Company. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions from the committee members?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I had a little interference and couldn't understand the, I guess you would call it for this project, the fiscal impact. Am I to hear that there'll be none for this, for the district?
Correct. All of the costs associated with the project are essentially passed through Director Williams.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay, any questions from any other board members? Okay, seeing none. I have a follow-up question to Director Williams' question. Since the overall project is a little over $3 million, and right now we're at the first part of this, and total payments are going to be an additional $97,270. Did I hear it correctly that Golden State has already given that money to the district, or is that going to be given?
The additional $97,000 has already been paid by Golden State to West Basin. So we already have a check in hand from Golden State for that amount.
And then do we have an agreement with Golden State signed that says they will be fully responsible for the entire project cost?
The way that Metropolitan Water District implements these projects is they initially provide just letters that identify the costs for different phases, but there will be an agreement. There will be an agreement before the construction is implemented between Metropolitan Water District and West Basin. And so we would have a similar agreement with Golden State before the construction starts.
Okay, so maybe we can expand a little bit more on the status of the agreement when we bring this item up to the full board. The reimbursement agreement, and more specifically, I'm more concerned of the reimbursement agreement between Golden State and West Basin.
Sure, I can provide additional information on that, Director.
Okay. If there's no other questions, should we move this to the full board, Director Williams?
I concur.
Okay, so this item will be considered by the full board at the next board meeting. Next item up is the item 5B, and Mr. General Manager, would you like to introduce that one?
Yes, thank you, Chairman Alvarez. The next item, 5B, is a procurement of reverse osmosis membranes for the Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant. This is related to the procurement of 1,608 reverse osmosis membranes. And for this item, we have Susanna Lee, our Senior Operations Engineer.
Thank you, EJ, for introducing this item. And good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board. You can find a copy of the memo on page 9 of the packet. If you recall, it was mentioned during the July and August operation monthly updates that there will be a few upcoming membrane replacements. And so this item is like the first membrane replacement action item for fiscal year 21-22. Specifically, as EJ had mentioned, this action item is for replacement of the RO membrane at Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant, which I will refer to JMM for short going forward. And as you're all aware, West Basin produces boiler feed water for Marathon Refinery. The RO system at this facility consists of 4 RO trains with a total of 1,584 RO membranes. And these membranes are at their 5 years old, and because they were replaced in 2016. And they're due for replacement because they're reaching to their useful life, the end of the useful life. And this is supported by our monthly review of membrane dashboard, which shows the performance of the membranes are deteriorating, and especially for the couple of water quality parameters, they are approaching to the contractual limits. And this is due partly to the Hyperion sewage spill events at which JMM has been receiving worse than normal water quality the last couple of months. And this results in more cleanings that have been performed on these membranes. And for your information, each time a cleaning is done on these membranes, the membrane performance does deteriorate a little bit. And we have observed significant increases in those two constituents in our July and August reports. So in addition, causing the membrane performance to deteriorate, the cleanings results in higher cleaning, chemical costs, as well as labor costs. So staff is just taking a proactive actions to procure these membranes in time to ensure that the West Basin is delivering product water that meets refinery contractual limits. And as a reminder to the board, in order for a RO membrane manufacturer or supplier to submit a quote, the manufacturer is required to pass a 7-month qualification testing. And the RO membrane pre-qualification testing is a common practice in the recycled water industry, as with our experience shows that membrane behaves differently and specifically in wastewater applications and is specific to the location and constituents of the water quality that is being treated. So the qualification test evaluates membranes based on criteria such as permeate water quality, as well as feed pressure. And based on our last pre-qualification testing, which was done in 2018, there are currently 5 RO membrane products that qualifies to meet the JMM RO membrane procurement constraints. And the names of the qualified suppliers and the respective membrane models can be found in Table 1 on page 9 of the packet. Staff's issued an invitation for quote to the 4 qualified membrane manufacturer on August 19th, and West Basin received quotes from 3 manufacturers. The lowest responsive quote is from Femtech Corporation, as you can find the details of the quotes on page 10 in Table 2. Staff review and consider the proposed pricing from Femtech to be competitive based on the previous membrane procurement. You can find those quotes and pricing on page 10 in Table 3 of the packet. As you can see that the unit price from the past of the recent procurements ranges from $345 to $398 per membrane. And furthermore, the unit price submitted by Femtech is less than the 2016 unit price West Basin paid for the existing membrane. And they also propose the same price that for the Chevron RO membranes that we purchased in 2020. So staff therefore recommends that West Basin procure 1,608 RO membranes, of which 24 are going to be spares from Femtech Corporation. So with that, I would like to read the recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to procure 1,608 reverse osmosis membranes and associated parts from Femtech Corporation for installation at the Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant for a total not to exceed the amount of $642,677.40, including shipping and sales tax. That I'll be happy to answer any question.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask the question of Barkat. And are you totally satisfied with this? You have reviewed it, and this is all meets your high standards.
Good afternoon, Chairman and President Williams. Absolutely, yes. The replacements are based on the information that we have and the tracking that we do, and looking at the pressures, the water quality, the contractual specifications that we have to meet with our customer. We need to do this. So to answer your question, yes.
Okay, well, thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other board members have some questions of staff?
No.
All right, seeing none. I've got a couple of follow-up questions. It was mentioned that part of the reason for replacing the membranes is due to the upset at the Hyperion plant. So can you expand on that a little bit more? And as a result of that upset, is the replacement of this membranes being accelerated because of the extra duty they had to serve?
Prior to the event, even though, well, let me step back. These membranes are 5 years old, and that's our normal useful life. And so we were planning to replace these, or maybe the end of this calendar year rather than now. But knowing that we already see a couple of the constituents that just, I guess we saw increase in their concentration the last 2 months. We know that those cleanings, the extra cleaning that we did this last 2 months really contributed to partly of these increases. So these membranes were set to be replaced, but we just replacing them a couple months earlier. Does that answer your question?
That answers my question, and then a follow-up on that. Would you be able to quantify what that additional effort is? I believe we're tracking costs associated with the impacts of the Hyperion upset to our facilities, and this would be one of those costs. And you may have already been tracking it. If not, I would like to see that additional costs quantified.
We're tracking all the extra cleaning costs, and in addition to cleaning chemicals, we use additional anti-scaling dosage, and as well as changing out cartridge filters more frequent than needed. So all these items are being tracked, and we are working together with finance to get those costs together.
Okay, so a portion of the replacement of the membranes at the Juanita Melinda McDonald plant will also be charged or tracked for purposes of the impact of the Hyperion upset.
That I will discuss with Barkat, because these were scheduled to be replaced. We're just pushing the schedule a couple months earlier.
Right. If I may add, Chairman Alvarez, so we are, like Susanna mentioned, tracking all the direct impacts of the Hyperion spill, meaning what equipment it caused to fail. There was some mention about some miscellaneous equipment at the Hyperion pump station, but also the cost of potable water, the cost of chemicals, as Susanna mentioned, the additional solids, trucking, the labor associated with our response, and etc. The trickiest part of the cost estimation is going to be that determination of how much did this event speed up the replacement of whether it's membranes or other types of pieces of equipment that we were planning on. That is the trickiest part. And those are the type of discussions that we're having both internally and with consultants and with Suez to see how is it best for us, what's the best way for us to determine that portion that you mentioned that is attributed to the quality that we've been receiving for the last 3 months. So it's going to be a difficult task to do, but we're going to give it our best shot to come up with some estimation.
I understand, and at some point it is going to be an engineering estimate. It may be a 5% impact or maybe a 10% impact, and you'll have some justification for it. You'll never have the exact number, but I would appreciate your efforts in that area. Second question has to do also with kind of the fiscal impact. And I understand that in the report, it says that this is included in the CIP budget. The CIP budget doesn't have a specific account for this money. It's just a big pot of money, if you will. So my question is, can we set aside the $1.43 million that you're requesting for here, and that money is going to be paid for from the operational income and not being borrowed funds? And I would like to see that clarification in the follow-up report.
I'll take this, Susanna. Yes. While in the actual capital budget book, like you mentioned, there was a pot of total other R&R projects, and there was like $6 million in there. But in our workshops that we provided in the budget, we went in further detail. We actually showed the RO replacement cost component of that, and it is the source of the funding would be PAYGO, and we'll be happy to kind of include that in the fiscal impact section here before it gets to the board meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, Director Williams, are you good with moving this one forward?
Yes, I am. I concur.
All right, so we'll move this forward to the full board for consideration at the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the information calendar. We have 3 items. The first item is the solids handling system improvements project. So, Mr. General Manager, would you like to tee that one up?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. The next item is 6A, our solids handling system improvements project related to the RFP for services. As you may recall, at our July Engineering Operations Committee, this item did come up as part of our capital improvement program update. It was decided at that time, or direction was provided to staff to continue to work on the draft RFP and bring it back to a future E&O committee for an update. And we have that item for you today. Presenting this item will be Wendell Johnson, our Manager of Engineering.
Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the committee and the board. Could you please turn to page 57 of your packet? I'm here this afternoon to provide the committee with information on the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility Solids Handling System Improvement Project. I will refer to it as ECL this point going further. As you recall, in July E&O meeting, committee meeting, Kevin Cullen provided a project update to the E&O. E&O committee provided comments and also requested to review the scope of services for the RFP for engineering services. I have attached a copy of this scope of services, which begins on page 48 of your packet. I'm going to go through some additional slides to remind you of the project and provide some additional information requested by the committee. Next slide. The solids handling system at ECL is part of the backbone of the recycling water program for all the products that the district produces. Solids are generated or produced from every process, almost every process in the production of recycled water. The solids consist of total suspended solids, biological oxygen demand components of the wastewater, as well as chemicals added to facilitate the processing of recycled water. Some of the products are coming from your backwash of your filters, which remove biological buildup. Solids handling process is critical in the operation of ECL, and it's good to know that ECL produces approximately 3 to 4 truckloads of solids on a daily basis. Next slide, please. This is an overview of the solids handling process. If you go to the rear of the ECL facility, you'll see a 2-story building, the tallest building on the facility, and that's essentially the dewatering building. The solids handling system includes the waste equalization basin, the high rate clarifiers, gravity thickeners, gravity belt thickeners, sludge conditioning tanks, and a plate and frame filter press for dewatering. There's a schematic on page 131 of your packet, which shows the flow of the water through the system. Next slide, please. About the equipment, okay? And the equipment was originally installed in phase 1, or the original construction of ECL. It was retrofitted in 2007, which increased the capacity to handle solids from 50 tons a day to about 75 tons a day. The filter press and the feed pumps are the bottleneck of the system. Generally, throughout the system, there's redundancy, except for when you get to these 2 elements that handle the dry sludge at the end of the process. The filter press and the feed pumps have been out of production since 2000. Spare parts are made to order, and they take about 6 to 10 weeks to delivery time. The useful life, according to the State of California Controller's Office of Utilities, states that the useful life of this type of equipment is about 15 years, and this equipment has been in service for about 27 years. The process is not automated. It is a hand process where you have to send an operator up to the facility to do what is known as to run a batch, where the batch of sludge is dewatered and it's dropped directly into a waiting truck to be hauled away. When trucks miss their pickups for whatever reason, I mean, we're having a hard time now because of the post-pandemic of getting truck drivers, and it's affecting a lot of areas of operation. The solids tend to back up in the facility, and they can back up to the point where if one of the plate presses are offline, where we have to reduce the actual production of recycled water, or we need to augment the recycled water with potable water in order to provide water for our customers that are out there. And so this area of the solid handling does not have any redundancy in it. Next slide, please. Okay. In July of 2018, we completed a feasibility study and a condition assessment study. It was comprehensive. The study itself cost about $213,000 to produce, in addition to just a condition assessment of all aspects of the equipment that was in the solids handling process. It also took a bench scale testing of the pH compliance. Okay, you have to take the sludge from about a 7.9 to 12 in order to transport the sludge. And this is accomplished by adding either a slurry lime or a dry lime to the system. The report also took a look at 5 different possible alternatives of replacing the equipment and what the process would look like. It had a full-scale centrifuge pilot testing where a centrifuge was brought to the facility and it was operated for approximately 7 days, where it actually took actual sludge that was being produced at the time and dewatered it and see how effective that system was on it. The study also includes a construction cost estimate and life cycle cost analysis, as well as final recommendation for design and scope. Next slide, please. Some of the conclusions of the study include that the buildings are in good condition. Okay, and you have 2 buildings out there. You have the dewatering building as well as the sludge gravity belt building also. The majority of the solids handling equipment is beyond its useful life. Most of it was originally supplied or part of the original construction of the facility. The pH compliance could be achieved using the lime slurry or dry lime or caustic. And there may be a savings to switching the operation to the dry lime because you're transporting less liquids to the landfill. And so the recommended dewatering technology is a centrifuge with a dry lime post-treatment used for stabilization of the pH of the sludge. The recommended technology is effective on the thickened sludge, and this was a conclusion drawn upon by the successful pilot study at ECL. Next slide, please. And in addition, in order for us to do our true due diligence, we took a look at a sewer discharge study, which was conducted, and it was a feasibility study to see if the actual solids could, instead of having our own solids handling operations at the plant, if we could discharge into the county facility. This report is included in your agenda packet. It's page 138. It starts on. The conclusion was based on the conditions. The blending project didn't seem feasible or cost effective in comparing to the capital project. We had a couple of constraints. We were looking at 3 different waste streams and blending them together in order to discharge them into the county's system. And a part of the constraint was the capacity of the existing system. The capacity had only 60 gallons per minute, and our discharges were producing between 116 gallons per minute and 136 gallons per minute. Next slide, please. Like I said, we have attached a scope of services for the RFP, and that begins on page 48 of your packet. There's approximately 6 tasks that are involved in the design of this particular project. You have your typical general coordination and project administration, where they meet with West Basin and Suez and discuss the design and get data back and forth. The site investigation includes a physical visit to the site and to do the preliminary or the design and the layout of the facilities using the site constraints, as well as reviewing some of the reports that have been produced along the way, certainly the feasibility study, as well as the sewer connection study. The preliminary design report, or referred to as the PDR, is approximately a 30% design, where most of the core elements are known about the project, meaning that there's a good cost estimate of the project. The process has been designed. the facility has a preliminary layout, and there's cost estimates for the equipment, processes, and the cost of operation. Then we go into the facility design, which produces 3 review sections of drawings for the design. One is at 60% design, the other is at 90, and then 100% design when the design is complete. And this is the design that is used to advertise the project for construction. The bid, we also in the scope of services as assistance with the bid phasing of the project. In addition, we keep the design consultant on board for any engineering services during construction. Next slide, please. So the estimated costs from these estimated updated costs of this project is about 1.2 million in design. We have in this year's budget, fiscal year 2022, $1,030,000 for the first part of this design phase. The construction estimated for construction management is about $800,000, and the actual construction of the facility is approximately 10.7 million, bringing the total project cost to about $12.7 million. Next slide, please. So the funding sources, and this is kind of important. In the new contracts for both Carson and Torrance, there's a capital project charge as part of the rate, as part of the monthly service fee that that organization pays West Basin. And these projects are listed as part of the tasks that will be done over a period of time between 2021 and 2027. And the refineries have committed approximately $2.9 million towards this project. Our organization or engineering department will be looking for other grants, and that's to be determined. And approximately right now, approximately $9.8 million would be financed. Next slide, please. Okay. The current milestones for the project. We plan to complete the RFP for engineering services by the end of September. This is one of our stops along the way for the comments from the E&O committee. We expect to award a design contract sometime in December, and the final design is expected in July of 2022. We'd like to award the construction contract in the fall of 2022, and the construction period is approximately 12 to 18 months, depending on the supply chain and some of the equipment that's available. And so we'd like to see the project completely commissioned in mid-2024. Next slide. At this time, I'd like to take your questions.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, any other questions from any other board members?
Nope.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. Let's start kind of where you ended with the financing. Can you expand a little bit more on the Chevron contribution? And this goes back to slide on page 66.
Yeah, Barb,
Yeah, I'll step in on this. I'm a little bit more familiar with this one. So the way with, when we initiated supply to the refineries 25 years ago, we put together agreements with each one of them. Mm-hmm. And as some of these agreements ended, we started negotiations on new ones. So in particular, the Chevron boiler feed agreement amendment was basically structured similar to the old agreement. It had fixed charges. It also had commodity charges. However, this go around, the fixed charges was not based on just the construction of the whole facility and that's it. It was based on, look, these facilities have a lifespan, and now we need to refurbish some of them. And so in the both of these agreements, the new ones, if you will, the fixed charge component of the new agreement is based on all these R&R type of projects, refurbishment type of projects that we see in the next 5 to 10 years that we need to do at the different facilities. There's a benefit for these refurbishments to the different refineries. And so what we did as part of the agreement negotiation is go back and estimate, okay, this solids facility, how much of the solid finish facility is benefit to Chevron, how much of benefit is it to Torrance, and we included these projects as part of the agreement. It's actually attached to the agreement saying, here are these projects, here's the estimated cost of this project, and based on these estimated costs, this equates to a capital charge that you would have to pay monthly for us to pay for these projects. And so as part of these two latest agreements, those projects are included, and you can see the allocation that was estimated 16.4 for Chevron, 6.4 for the Torrance nitrified agreement that we signed this year. And so these capital charges are coming our way on a monthly basis, and they're based on an estimate of what the project costs. If the project costs go higher, we would have to provide documentation saying why it went higher. And if we do that, then at the end of the project, the costs get reconciled. If the costs are more, they would pay us more. If the costs are less, we would turn back and give them some of the money that they had given us. There's some sort of a reconciliation that occurs at the end of the project. Now, if we don't do these projects, again, because of the fact they're paying us the capital monthly fixed charges for these, we would basically turn the money back to them if we don't do the projects at all. That, I hope I kind of explained it in a nutshell, but I'm happy to answer any other questions you have about that.
Okay, maybe you can clarify. So let's do Chevron first. So you have on the slide up that it's the 2020 Chevron agreement. What's the length of that, the time period of that agreement? That starts in 2020 and extends to what, or what's the time that agreement covers?
That amendment, actually, the original agreement ended in 2016, but there was some time. There was a lot of negotiation going on at that time, and then full agreement was reached in 2019, and the signing was done in 2020, and the agreement lasts up until 2026. So the projects that were included in the calculation of the capital fixed charges were projects that would be conducted up until 2026.
Okay, so the money that's coming in from that agreement is coming in on a monthly basis or an annual basis? I think you mentioned monthly.
Yes, I believe it's monthly.
Okay, so we're going to get $2.1 million from the Chevron agreement over a period of basically 6 years.
Correct.
All right. And is that $2.1 million just the amount of money that is coming in for the replacement or repairs of the solid handling portion of the Ed.C. Little plant, or is that the total amount of money for all of the repairs and replacement that are attributed to Chevron for the 6-year period that that agreement is in place?
Just the solids. This amount is just the solids, not the entire amount. I believe the entire amount was more closer to $15 million for different types of R&R type projects. And I do like to make a correction. I apologize. The Chevron agreement goes to September 2027.
Okay, 27. So we are going to get $2.1 million for the replacement of the solids handling facility at the Ed C. Little plant over a 7-year period.
Correct.
In the Torrance agreement, much smaller amount, is that the same concept, that $0.8 million? And then the other is, what is the term of that agreement? It starts in 2021, but what's the
Right.
explanation?
Yeah, it's the same basis, same type of concept with them. The term of that agreement expires in August 2023. The reason for that being is that we wanted to, the original boiler feed agreement ends at August 2023. And so there was an understanding by the three parties, the city, the refinery, and West Basin, that it would be good to have a master agreement moving forward from 2023 to capture everything. So to answer your question, August 2023 is the term of that agreement.
Okay. So that agreement, that $0.8 million will be collected basically over the next 2 years.
Correct.
Okay. Going back to the solids handling facility at the Ed C. Little plant, is that the solid handling facility for the entire process of the Ed C. Little plant? So therefore, it's rated at what capacity?
The current capacity is about 57 million gallons per day of the solids handling facility.
Okay, so we have a solids handling facility that can handle a flow through the plant of 57 MGD, even though the plant operates around 40 MGD, which is, you got then additional capacity, which is a good thing. But is that correct?
That's correct. I believe in the RFP or in the project study, we're probably looking at, how do we get to the 70 million gallons per day? It may not be part of this particular project, but we would be looking at space within the facility for future expansion of the solids handling based on the current amount of solids that are generated at the facility.
Okay, so next question, and as a follow-up, both right now Chevron and the Torrance refinery are helping pay for this, but the water that's being produced at the Ed C. Little facility also then goes to the Juanita Melinda McDonald plant and is there for the Marathon refinery. So part of the treatment here is also benefiting Marathon. Is Marathon, I don't see them listed here, or are there discussions going on with Marathon to participate in funding this project?
There has been discussions with Marathon, not specifically for this project, Chairman Alvarez, but specifically to putting together a framework to extend their agreement with us. Their agreement with us terms out in January 2025. And so they have an agreement already with some contractual obligations for West Basin to give them a certain spec of water. And they do have some fixed charges in there that was based on the original construction of the facility. And they do have some commodity charges in there, but we don't have, because it will term out later in the future. We don't necessarily, we're not in a place right now to negotiate this new setup that we have with some of the other refineries. We have in the past, in our discussions with them, approached them to say that there are R&R facilities that we are looking for capital fixed payments in extensions, but we don't have that today because we're still part of the original contract.
Okay, so they're not, whenever the agreement was entered into with Marathon, it was some amount of money that assumed that this is going to cover all your R&R costs.
Right.
And that agreement was entered into when? I don't know the month, but just a year.
January 2000, I think.
I'm sorry?
January 2000. I believe it's a 25-year agreement.
Okay, so 2000. All right. I'll assume that there's very little money for R&R overall. One of the issues, and this is just for discussion purposes, because life is what it is right now.
Just a clarification, Dr. Alvarez, I heard you say you assume that it's going to, we have the money for R&R. If you look at the agreement, just so I can be clear with this, not to, if you look at the agreement, it says you have capital fixed payment based on, I believe it was like $24 million at that time. This is $24 million, the cost of the project, and you have capital fixed payments as part of that. And then you have commodity charges, and the commodity is going to be set this way. It doesn't necessarily say that this is going to cover the R&R or that is going to cover the R&R, but it says, you know, this is what the agreement is.
Thank you for the clarification. One of the things that I would like to see is when facilities are built, and typically, you know, facilities like this do require repair and replacement, especially like membranes. We just talked about having to replace membranes at the Juanita McDonald plant. Membranes have a limited life cycle. You pretty much know how frequently you're going to need to replace them, etc. And it's kind of a good idea to have those funds at hand at the time of the replacement. So when facilities are built, you know, you have both the capital financing and then setting aside reserve funds that are structured so that either there are annual contributions or however the structure of that reserve fund is, so that the money is available for the projects. We don't really have that in place. And I would like to eventually get us there. And
agreed. The new agreements, we didn't necessarily have some of that with the old agreements. With the new agreements, fully agree with you. With the new agreements, what we did is that the commodity charge was based on O&M costs. And part of the O&M costs, we made it specific to include that small item replacements, small asset replacement type of costs are included in that calculation. So let's say if you know, if the term is 10 years or 15 years, but you replaced a valve that is, you know, that meets the classification of an asset for West Basin after 5 years, that cost be included in the calculation for the commodity charge. So with the new agreements, that's what we're intending to do, and then we hope to kind of do the same with future agreements as well.
Understand that we've tried to do that in the past agreements, but at the end of the day, if we go to, you know, the slide on page 66, we're effectively saying that we do not have the reserve fund set aside where you can tell me, hey, look, the money's been set aside, all of the money is in fund number, blah, 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 here it is, etc., because we're proposing to finance this particular item, at least portion of it. My other question would be also some of the money that Chevron has paid. yes, from Chevron's point of view, they're going to say, hey, we gave you the money, whether you set it aside in a specific fund for purposes of the replacement or not, that's your option. I don't see in the CIP where that money was set aside, so the money that's been paid previously has probably been used for other projects. And so when we say we have $2.1 million from Chevron on paper, and from Chevron's point of view, and from a contractual point of view, we should have that money, but that money has not been really segregated for this project where we can say in fund number XYZ, money is available and it comes from the following sources. So as we do move forward, it is very important that we keep tracking these things, because otherwise we end up financing this. And it is not, in my opinion, a very progressive way to run the operation, to just say anytime that we need to do something, even though we've collected the money in the past, we've used that money to pay for other things, and now we have to finance it. So we recently went and refinanced our bonds at a much lower rate, but in refinancing our bonds, our long-term bonds, we actually increased our long-term bonded indebtedness because we had to pay off the commercial paper that's been borrowed to pay for projects like this, which in an ideal world, which we don't live in, we would have a fund for the replacements of these facilities. And I would like to see that much more discussion than on the real fiscal impacts of financing, facilities that have been constructed. We're not talking about building a whole new facility. We're not talking about borrowing money to increase capacity or anything else. We're basically talking about maintaining the investment that we have. And as this item moves forward, I would like to see it come back for further discussion on the financing and how we can avoid borrowing money for this particular project. And there is money in the capital improvements. I made a comment earlier that we don't really allocate the money. I'd like to see that money starting to be allocated so that when we go through the funds that we have, we go through those funds, and that we don't, I think sometimes, at least in my mind, it seems to be that we double count some of this money. And we start segregating it and saying, no, we're instead of fund, here's fund XYZ, this money's been set aside for this project. And if there's project overruns, then that will also become very apparent. Okay, so I guess what I'm asking for is a continued refinement of our project funding in general and specifically for this project, and identifying where that money is going to come from besides borrowing it. And we have some time to do that, and setting up a fund that actually tracks for that money, so that when people pay for these things, they know that that money is being used for that intended purpose. I think in the schedule, you guys had shown that you wanted to get the proposal for the design portion out by the end of the month of September. On that, there is in the RFP, a first step, which is the preliminary design report. I think in that preliminary design report, specifically for this project, is probably more important than generally would be the case. Whatever consultant is doing the work really needs to focus on reevaluating the solids handling facility, looking at the total capacity of the SC Little plant and the future capacity, because we are limited to a degree. It's we have quite a bit of land, but we built on quite a bit of land too, so we have some land limitations, etc. And I think long term, there is a desire to expand the capacity of that plant at a higher level of treatment than we currently use. So I would like the proposal to maybe be expanded a little bit more before you guys get it out in the next couple of weeks, to really focus on that preliminary design report so that the consultant evaluates the existing feasibility study, the blending study, other documents, and the overall operation of the plant.
Noted.
Okay, any other comments from the board? Think. All right, if not, Director Williams, are you okay with the comment that we made to move this forward? That we need to work on the RFP?
When you say move it forward, you're moving it forward in terms
Well,
of,
I misspoke. Do they continue to work with the RFP, addressing and that the comments that I have made be continued to be brought forward?
yes, I agree with that.
Okay.
So
All right. Well, thank you very
just so we
much.
understand, we're okay to kind of address, just to make sure, to address your comments, Chairman Alvarez, make sure that there's a component in the PDR that looks at the potential, not only the current capacity, but the potential capacity of the plant and the potential expansion of the facility itself. And then we are okay to continue to issue the RFP for the engineering design services.
Yes. And that maybe we should bring, well, we'll leave it at that.
And then the other request as well with regards to the funding mechanisms to make sure that the costs are being tracked and the money is being set aside. Thank you.
Ordinarily, staff, do we get approval from the board to solicit or to issue an RFP, or do we do that without going to the board first?
President Williams, in the past, the board has taken specific interest in different RFPs, whether that be a public information item or in the engineering and operations items. So on occasion, at the direction of the board, we have brought forward our RFPs and provided that to a committee for specific feedback.
Well, I would recommend that any RFP come before the full board for just so that the board is aware of what's going on. And it's just a step in the process. And it
Any
shouldn't
RFP?
be. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, President Williams. You said any RFP to come to the board?
Well, not all, but like this one, of course.
Okay. All right.
But we would play it, go case by case, because of course we don't need to have a long discussion on all of the RFPs that you issue when they're just for routine design and engineering.
What we've attempted to do in the at least the last couple of years that I've been here, but I think for a longer period of time, is use those CIP updates, the written ones and verbal ones, to kind of give an indication of what may be coming, a month or two in advance, and maybe perhaps that could be a sign for the committee members and the board members to say, this RFP actually could be something that we want to take a look at in detail.
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah.
And President Williams, maybe I could add, West Basin clearly does not have a set or defined policy as far as this goes. there have been times where it's, I won't say confusing, but obviously staff never wants to or would never want to intend to release an RFP with the understanding that maybe the board doesn't want to move forward with a program or project. We don't want consultants to be producing proposals for an RFP if they're not moving forward. So perhaps staff can put together a draft policy for the board's consideration as to the process in which we release our RFPs. I've taken note here of your comment. We'll go back to
Okay.
additional comments and try to put forth the policy.
I think with Director
Hello.
Williams.
Hello, Mr. Chair, this is Director Gray. I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Director Gray.
Yeah, I just wanted to support what Director Williams and President Williams is saying. I think it's really important to make sure the board's aware of, certainly certain RFPs, and I think the GM just made comment as to looking at a policy that relates to RFPs, because all board members don't necessarily attend committee meetings, and we should be aware of RFPs, especially significant ones. So I do support the effort to look at some kind of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gray. So following up on that, I also agree. I think the Director Williams' point is very much on target about generally bringing back, especially RFPs that are for services that are going to lead to significant expenses for the board and have other policy implications. And in this case, this has both significant funding exposure that we may or may not be prepared for, and an investment in a treatment system that then commits us, nothing commits us 100%. You can always build something and then not use it, but that's not a very prudent and responsible way to operate. So then it commits us to some long-term operations of the plant, which may or may not be consistent with where we may end up. So given that, I'm not quite sure you're going to be able to get that done by the end of this month. I don't see a critical need, whether it's done in 1 month or another. I'd rather see it done well than rushed.
I agree.
Thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. And I think that you provided great feedback to staff related to this specific RFP. Staff will continue to work on it and hope addressing those issues and concerns related, again, to this RFP. And we hope to maybe bring it back to the full board or include it within the information items at the full board meeting if staff's able to adjust that RFP or amend that draft. And then that way the board would have an opportunity to review it at that time.
Okay. So with that, let's move on to the next item, and that's the capital improvement program update. So Mr. General Manager, would you like to tee that one up?
Yes, Chairman Alvarez. The next item, as you mentioned, 6B is our capital improvement program update. This is a monthly reoccurring update. And again, we have Wendell Johnson, our manager of engineering, here to present this item.
Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez, and members of the board and members of the committee. I'm here this afternoon to provide you a CIP program update on certain projects in the CIP program. This format is different from what you've seen in the past, and I'm testing the waters with this format. We're presenting projects moving forward, and we're going to present individual milestones that we will be hitting. Either we've hit this month or we will be hitting in the next few months. And again, like we had in our previous discussion, is to give the board a heads up of what projects are coming in the pipeline and where we are in the development of the project. So next slide, please. Back in July, I think that I presented on the DLD building, and we were directed by the committee to onboard a real estate appraisal service, look at the value of the building so that we can determine what level of capital investment we would want to make in the building, or if we want to sell the building and relocate. And we were successful to bring on board a real estate appraisal services when we issued an RFP mid-August, and they responded to the RFP September 2nd, and we've got a responsible proposal from a service out of Torrance. And we will be moving forward with that. In addition to that, the managers are looking at a needs assessment to determine what type of square footage each individual department is required in order to function. Next slide, please. Something that has been quite fruitful for
If I could interrupt you for a second, Wendell, and I apologize. Can we go back to the previous item? On that one, you received one proposal for doing a value estimate of the building. Did you say you're going to move forward with hiring that firm?
Correct.
Okay. Can you please send the board a copy of their proposal?
Sure, no problem. Okay. Any additional questions?
Not right now, just that request. Thank you.
Just an update of something that will be coming down the pipeline in the next month or so. And this is a project that's been a program that's been quite fruitful for the agency. And it's in the name of the program is the Harbor South Bay Water Recycling Project. Essentially, this projects are a partnership between West Basin and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Okay, and approximately $35 million agreement on the first leg of the project has constructed considerable amount of distribution system for the agency. And we are right now reviewing an agreement that we're going to amend, and we'll have an additional $35 million for future projects. Next slide. This is a list of successful projects that were completed under the first agreement, and we are developing a list of future projects or future extensions of the distribution system that we will be including in the next agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers. Any questions about that?
Oh, just a clarification, these are projects that are already done.
Yeah, these are completed projects.
Okay, so the $35 million, you're going to identify future projects.
Correct.
All right, we do not have that list now.
We're using the master plan. We don't have that list completed right now, and we're utilizing the recently completed master plan to determine which projects we would place on that list of projects. And the list is kind of fluid with the Corps. They take a list. We kind of give them a list of more than $35 million worth of projects, and you're able to go put new projects on there, remove some projects, add additional projects. So it's quite flexible, and it takes a little bit of time for them to get it done. Generally, the $35 million is probably over a 10 to 15 year program time, depending on the value of the project.
And the $35 million that we talked about earlier, that money's all been spent on these projects.
Correct.
So the $35 million that we're talking about is a new agreement. We have no money at the Corps of Engineers until we have this new agreement executed.
Correct.
Okay. We do have one recycled water pipeline project that's under design and will be coming back to the board for construction once that's put out to bid. And it was discussed, and financing of that entire project was kind of open-ended, that all of the money was not in place. And that's the extension of the recycled water pipeline to serve the Palos Verdes Peninsula. So it would behoove us to make sure that we get that full 75% of that project paid for out of that additional $35 million. And then we come up with the other 25%.
Chairman Alvarez.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the issues, so within the timing of these projects, we did have the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, our reauthorization, our project modification, we were awarded $35 million. $1 million of that has actually been appropriated. So it's kind of in the queue within the LA District Office. And I think that was intended for potential design of the North Gardena lateral, as well as the Mills Park project. Unfortunately, the timing and the design related to the PV lateral made that project extremely difficult to fit within a potential partnership with the U.S. Army Corps. And so that project is currently not included in there. However, West Basin staff has been working with our federal lobbyist, Vance Guayaca Associates, to potentially find funding through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. So we're looking for EPA funding to dedicate potential additional grant funding to that project. But at this time, the PV lateral project has moved forward without a partnership with the U.S. Army Corps. And part of that is just the timing of when we were able to get our authorization through Congress and begin that re-up of the partnership with them, and the timing of when the PV lateral had moved forward. So unfortunately, it does not look like that it would be possible right now to dedicate any of that $35 million to the PV lateral. But again, we're looking for additional federal funding that we could possibly get to apply to that project.
It might be worthwhile to spend a little bit of effort to try to move some of the money around as you execute the agreement. I understand the federal appropriations and that money has been appropriated, but even within the federal appropriations, the agencies such as the Corps of Engineers do have some leeway. And it would behoove us to spend a little effort to maybe see if we can allocate some of that money to the PV lateral project, because that is a substantial capital expenditure coming up, which is only partially funded right now. And if we can get a substantial amount of money funded for that, that would make that project much more feasible. Okay.
Staff will provide an additional update at the Water Policy and Legislation Committee related to our appropriations and our federal efforts as far as applying for grants. So we'll bring that forward through that committee. But of course, we can apply it to future discussions within this committee as well.
Thank you.
Okay. If I may add, also with regards to the list of projects, as Wendell mentioned, that we're putting a list of projects based on the master plan. As many of you directors may recall, when the master plan, we looked at, we provided actually options on how to proceed. A, B, C. A included more of the potential indirect potable reuse type of projects, you know, putting more water into the ground, maybe making use of some of the capacity that we have in our pipelines. So there's some expansion type of projects, but mostly focus. The list of projects that were included right now is based on option A, which was more focused on indirect potable reuse. And so that's the list that we're going to put in. But again, there's some flexibility to modify the list moving forward.
Okay, so you're telling me that for purposes of the new $35 million allocation, you're not gonna have any purple pipe projects in there?
There is some purple pipe.
Where?
So as EJ mentioned, there's the Mills Park, there's the North Gardena, and then there's also the Kenneth Hahn that we brought to the board, I think a while back, but the cost was too much for the design of it. I think that the board decided to kind of put it on hold until further funding is available. That project is in there. And there's a couple other purple pipe tile project, one East Carson, but we're prepared to kind of bring back the list. If you'd like, we can come back at a future committee and show that list again for the board to view the full list.
If the list is in the recycled water master plan, I mean, that list is just a big wish list. It far exceeds $35 million, and there's no real rhyme or reason to it. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you just throw that back up here and everybody just says, so what? It's just a big wish list. I'll just leave it at that.
It's the
And
best thing we have right now for a list.
right, but when we're planning to spend money, it would be best to really have prioritization of needs and why that project is necessary, as opposed to a wish list of these are good things to do. There's a lot of good things to do, but there's only so much that we can do, and we do really need to be fiscally responsible. And you're going to keep hearing me harp on that. So when we do come back, it's not just here's all the projects. Here's the projects. Here's why these are critical projects, not why these are good ideas. There's a lot of good ideas out there, and I'm repeating myself right now. So I'll leave it at that.
No, I completely agree.
And we should be much more focused on the indirect potable reuse. So if that's the direction we're going, I think that is the right direction. I'm very supportive of that and have argued for that. But we can't just say, well, we have this project and that project. We do need to prioritize projects with why they are high priority projects. All right, with that, let's keep moving on, because otherwise it'll be like other times and we'll end up going way past here. So Wendell, my apologies, keep going.
No, your comments are very useful, Director. Next slide, please. This is an update for the Title 22 converted filter booster pump station. As you may recall, we're in the process of renovating or rehabbing the Title 22 filters. And one of the large components of this Title 22 filter project is the Title 22 converted filter booster pump station. What this project will enable us to do is enable to increase the filter capacity of the converted filters by 3 times. Currently, we're only using half of the filters because of the hydraulic difference between the filters, and we're only producing 2.5 million gallons a day, and the filters have a capacity of up to 10 million gallons per day. And this booster station will allow us to do that. Currently, we received 100% plans for the project, and that's under review by staff. We're on track to put this out for advertising in October of this year, and we hope to award the contract for the construction of the booster pump station in November of this year. At the same time, in parallel, we're in the process of advertising for the RFP for construction management services. The RFPs are due in October. In this particular case, these contractors will be picked from the on-call services contract because we still have contractual dollar amounts available in that service, and that will expedite the onboarding of the construction manager and will allow for a constructability look at the project. The estimated total cost of the project, including the CM services, is $1.6 million. Any questions?
No question, just a comment consistent with what I've said earlier. When this comes back for award, I would like to see specifically where that money is coming from.
Okay. Okay. Next slide, please. I think we touched upon the PV recycled water pipeline project. And this is an estimated time frame of the project. As you may be aware, you may recall that in an earlier project update, we talked about that the project that we split the project. We split the project from, originally it was a pipeline and pump station project combined, and we separated the projects this summer, and we're at 100% design on the pipeline. Okay, it's currently being reviewed by West Basin, and it's out to the various jurisdictions that are in the permit process. I know that we received a renewal from Caltrans, which was very quick, and I know that the county and both the city of Torrance as well as the city of PV will be taking a look at the permitting of the project. And so that is the critical path in order to get this out and on the streets. The bid processing, we're expecting to start the bid processing in October, November, and hope to award a contract for the pipeline in December of 2021. The pump station is going to take a little bit more time to get the design done. Our expectation is to have 100% design. If you don't recall, or just to remind you about this, is that this project was 100% designed, and then the city of Torrance directed us to relocate the pump station, and that's what we're in the process now, is that we're relocating the pump station on the site, and they're doing the design for that particular work. Currently, it's also in part of the permit reviewing process for both the jurisdictions that are involved in that. The county and the city of Torrance is involved in the permitting. We're expecting to start the bid process for the pump station in January of 2022. At the same time, we expect to put out a construction management services RFP October and November. Both the construction management for the pipeline as well as the pump station will be combined together. And we expect to award the contract for the construction management services in December of 2021. Our estimated cost of the project at this particular time, combined project, is $12.9 million. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. Where does the contract for public outreach during construction, where does that fit in there?
Is Amy online?
I believe that was presented at the.
Yeah, I know when it was presented, but how does it fit into what you're doing? You're doing here.
The $12.9 million budget here is all encompassing everything related to the project. So it includes the money we've spent so far on consultants, on the feasibility study, the preliminary design, the previous designs, but it also includes some of the rework that we're doing because of the pump station and the permitting and some of the other. So the costs, to answer your question, Director Williams, the costs that the PI department is going to spend for the outreach are included. It's charged to the same account number for the project itself.
Okay.
Okay, Wendell, keep going.
Next slide, please. Over at the Torrance Refinery water recycling plant, We have a couple small projects. We had a issue with the retaining, we have an issue with a eroding channel that is used sometimes a year or every couple of years when they have excessive rainfall. And so in order to, and it's undermining both, it has the potential for undermining the tank, but it's undermining some of the pipe supports at this particular time. And so we've taken a look at this project and we've developed plans and specifications for a retaining wall to prevent the erosion, as well as to address a backflow device which has exceeded its useful life. It had to be repaired this year, and the people that repaired it indicated that the useful life of this device is coming to an end. And so we have the design package that's nearing completion, and our anticipation is to advertise for construction in October of this year. The total project cost is about $320,000.
So that's all inclusive design, construction of the retaining wall and the replacement of the backflow preventer?
Yes.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Okay, this is very visual, and this is one of our most visual projects that we have out there. And after a lot of delay with the trucking industry, availability of resins to actually create the tank, this project is finally coming to near completion. We were able to set the 2 additional tanks. I believe they arrived on the 20th of August, and they were installed that same day. And we're grateful or very happy to announce that this project is coming to an end, and our expectation is that this project will be complete, and a notice of completion will be issued by the end of October of 2021. So. Any questions on this project?
No.
Okay, next slide, please. Okay, this is a heads up project. Okay, recently doing a routine inspection of our facilities, the day tank, which is a tank that is filled from those 4 tanks I showed in the previous slide, was leaking, and staff is taking a look at what is the most economic solution to this particular problem. The tank itself was installed in 2007. They have about a 15-year life expectancy out there. And so we're looking at a couple issues, a couple ways to either repair the tank or to replace the tank, and a timeline in order to do that for. So it's not an emergency repair. It's just an urgent, and this is part of the storage tank project, which is part of this fiscal year project. It's kind of a kickoff this fiscal year, but we're moving this tank up ahead because of the fact that we discovered some leaks doing a routine operator. Suez discovered a leak doing the routine inspection of the facility. Any questions about this project? Next slide, please. Okay, one of our largest projects that the department is handling right now, and this is the JMM Carson Phase 2 expansion project. It has finally started to mobilize. We have our stormwater permit in place. We have our field offices set up there. Currently, the contractor is doing potholing, which is essentially locating the tops of the utilities that are out there. We also have in October 1st coming up a partner section with the key players, West Basin Suez, the labor compliance group, along with the construction management firm, and along with the contractor. So this project is starting to get some legs, and we're starting to see boots on the ground out there. So we're happy to report we're moving forward with this project. Any questions on that?
Not right now.
Next slide, please. Okay. We are happy to report that we met with Chevron under the Joint Management Committee meeting. This was in August of last month. We talked about this earlier. One of the projects that we did talk about or update the refinery about was the solids handling project. We also presented projects that were completed or near completed that are part of their fixed charges for capital improvement. And in this case, we have the Hyperion secondary effluent pump station, the new pump stations, pumps 5, 6, and 7, as well as the storage facility that we are completing that I talked earlier for the sodium hypochlorite, the 4-tank farm project. We also talked about the pending CIP and R&R projects that are going forward, and other projects that are needs that are not part of the agreement. We kind of identified those things. We talked about the West Basin assets on Chevron's property. The background on those tanks that are on their property, the maintenance agreement, as well as the condition assessment. Our next step is we have a follow-up meeting coming in October of this month to continue this dialogue with the refinery to keep them updated on the capital projects. And I believe that's my last slide in this presentation.
Okay, if that concludes that presentation, are there any questions from the board or comments? Okay, seeing none, I just want to point something out to you. In the projects that you just summarized, just for kind of updating us, you have $43.95 million if I add up all of the budgets that you presented. Most of those are estimates. Some of that cost may come in under, some of that cost may come in over. If we looked at last year's budget, the net revenues after expenses for the district was $9.9 million. So anything expenditures beyond the $19.9 million had to be from borrowed funds. And this year, the net revenues to the district after all expenses, et cetera, will probably be less because our water sales are going to be lower due to just water conservation, which overall is a good thing. And we've had additional expenses in trying to deal with the impacts of the Hyperion upset. So our net revenues would have been estimated close to what it was last year. And without other CIP money that you guys, that the district may have to contemplate, we're looking at substantially more exposure than the revenues that we have. And I would like us to really focus on how we're going to fund these projects or what projects we're not going to be able to do because we can't afford to fund them. Okay. So with that, we have one more information item, and that's the water facilities operations update. If you want to tee that up, Mr. General Manager.
Yes, Chairman Alvarez, as you mentioned, item 6C is our monthly regular water facilities operations update. This item will be presented by a trio of staff. We have E.G. Daniel, our Manager of Operations, Susanna Lee, our Senior Operations Engineer, as well as Frank Fuchs, our Operations Supervisor, presenting. Uzi, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Thank you, EJ. We'll actually start with Susanna, can give us an update, our regular monthly update. We'll go into some of the compliance and we'll outline some of the progress on the Hyperion upset in addition to Frank's update then. Thank you, EJ.
Well, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Uzi, thank you, EJ. So I'll try to go through the slides quickly so then we can stay on time for this meeting. So moving quickly on page 199 to slide number 2. This is our regular influent and disinfected tertiary product turbidity graph. Just a couple of things to highlight is that for the month of August, which is kind of like the second month into the event, the influent water quality continued to be about 50 NTU, and as you see here, that the disinfected tertiary was often above our permit limits as the result of the significant increase in the influent water quality. So the next slide here is the main takeaway from this graph is that if you look at month of July, when the initial water quality upset took place, the turbidity came in like way above 150, and for the month of August, it was a significant improvement that it went all the way down between 20 to 80 NTU. And even though that's a huge improvement, but the red line represents what a normal average influent turbidity would be, around 12.5. So it's still relatively higher than our normal operational range. And so we're still currently responding to these daily upsets. The next few slides will highlight some of like where we are and where operationally where we are, and just go over some of the water quality concerns that we're still facing. So we start off with discussing about water quality. As I mentioned, we're still in a highly unstable operational conditions. We're seeing 4 times as high as turbidity in the month of August and 3 times as high as TSS. So the significance of TSS, total suspended solids, is that we're producing perhaps 3 times as high as solids that's going through our solids handling facility. And the chart is to highlight that, Hyperion effluent has improved significantly. You can see that that they have improved. For TSS, they were as high as in the 300 to close to 400 range, and effluent, they were up at 150 NTU. But I want to point out that even though they have improved, and a lot of times the water that we're coming into our plant at Edward C. Little is a lot different and is not as one-to-one comparison. So I just want to highlight that. Another slide just to show how unstable our water quality is still. This top graph is to highlight what a normal turbidity range looks like. So this was last year, back in September to October, October 2020. The turbidity range from between 8 to 16. So the turbidity range was a lot tighter compared to what we are seeing currently in August to early September, which ranged between 20 to 50 NTU. So even though Hyperion water is improving, it's still a long way for us to back to normal operation mode. Just to go over quickly some of the challenges that we are seeing operationally. As I mentioned, water quality is still fluctuating daily or hourly. We see a huge swing between like at nighttime and compared to the morning time. Then the second item is that ability to clean all those extra solids. We were seeing 3 to 4 times as much as solids coming in. A lot of those solids, you know, one of the difficult and challenge that for our facility, unlike others, that a lot of solids are just recirculating within our system. So it just gets recirculated and we're overloaded with these solids. And so if we're missed a truck at the end of the treatment process, it really affects our process up front. So that is a huge challenge that we're facing. And the third items that we're currently experiencing is chemical shortages due to trucking issues, due to delivery of supplies, particularly ferric chloride. So we have to limit our production currently, and then which results in using potable water at our satellite facility, as well as even internal. We rely on potable water to supplement our disinfected tertiary and other product lines. And for our distribution system, they've been doing great work trying to do additional spot chlorination and running more taking more samples to ensure that our customer are not getting bad water quality in the distribution system. Compliance team have to report daily what our disinfectant tertiary production is and whether we meet compliance on a daily basis. And finally, you know, we are just trying to allocate the response efforts versus the regular O&M because we still have a plan to operate and there are regular PMs and versus CMs that needs to be completed in addition to all the additional response efforts. Here are some pictures just to highlight what we are dealing with. These pictures are pre-treatment, highway clarifier, all the solids are that is just get to kind of quote unquote stuck and recirculate in the pre-treatment up front at the beginning of our treatment process. And you see oil and lots of solids and even septic conditions. And another slide showing photos, even up till the end of August, you can see that there's a lot of foam in the filters, and then even foam in our phase 4 membrane basin. So these foams are fouling our membranes. So these phase 4 submersible membranes are due for replacement next year, but we are actively evaluating how the performance are, and we may need to replace this membrane a little bit sooner than needed. And then here, this is just showing some solids that at our back end, and it's, you know, we're trying to remove them using extra vacuum trucks and other ways to just help ensure that the solids doesn't get recirculate back to our system. And here is our monthly maintenance highlights, and I just want to just commend the SUS staff for keeping our facility up and running, even with all the additional responses. Here, because of the solids, a lot of additional solids, so it kind of took a hit on some of our sludge handling equipment. These photos on the left is showing staff replacing a sludge blowdown pump repair. And this photo in the middle, as Wendell highlighted in his update, this is the hypochlorite tank safety inspection that we discovered the tank issue. And finally, on the right, we have a couple other items on RO4, which is one of the Chevron RO trains, stem valve repair, and then finally a graphite belt thickener belt replacement on the bottom. With that, I'll turn it over to Uzi to continue with the compliance report.
Great. Thank you, Susanna, and good evening, directors. I'll take this opportunity real quick for another pat on the back to all our operators. As Susanna showed there in the update, in addition to all the efforts that were going on, the response effort and the recovery effort, like a lot of emergency response that's going on, in addition to the regular maintenance and things that would come up even sometimes on the best days. Some of you may have heard about the power outage at DWP. That did affect us. On Sunday evening, there was a large accident that took out about 300 customers, including our Hyperion pump station. Staff responded wonderfully. Many of us were up until the dawn the next morning. And again, this wasn't related to the Hyperion upset, but this just shows that there are other things that come up. And I think it's not just a celebration to operators, but also to all of us at West Basin, including the board, for showing that we are prepared, we take pride in our job, and willing to respond when necessary. We will highlight the event that happened this weekend and part of this week in next month's presentation. We have some great photos. So to continue on the positive notes, I think it's always nice to show the small victories. These are a recognition from the Los Angeles County sanitation districts. That is where all our sewer connections go to. I know sometimes it gets interesting. We receive water from Hyperion, but any of our waste goes to the LA County Sanitation District. They come frequently. They've been coming for surprise inspections a lot more lately. And this is to acknowledge that we have a great compliance record. And so a clap of the hands to everyone involved in that. So thank you. Next slide, please, Susanna. Regular update again, showing what we do. We do submit our reports that we have to submit. As Susanna mentioned, we've been in constant contact with the regulators. We have requirements to sample weekly, monthly, but if we're offline or running unique situations, we make sure a long list of and a long legacy of good compliance and collaboration with regulators has certainly paid off. We've chosen to do a lot of additional sampling out in our distribution system. We've seen a lot of opportunities with this, and I think this does a nice job of just showing what is regularly required and also what we're doing in addition to make sure that we can tell our purveyors, the public, that we have our eyes on the system and are ensuring compliance, that we can continue to serve water. I also will take advantage of this. What we did submit as a draft is our 5-year engineering report. That is a very large engineering report required to be updated every 5 years, required per the permit and also the groundwater recharge regulations. That was done in-house by Jamie Burkhardt and Susanna as signature. In addition, we have to hire or we utilize our contractor hydrogeologist. It does require review and a stamp by them, but it's a great example of teamwork. We hope to get it finalized, submitted to the regulators, and of course, always happy to share that with any of the directors if they'd like to see that. But again, another great effort showing the diligence of our staff. Next slide, please. And on here, I can go ahead and turn it over to Frank Fuchs to highlight a lot of our customer service and potable water programs.
Thank you, Uzi. Good evening again, directors. So as Uzi mentioned, this is our potable water customer service update, starting off with the work that we support our purveyors with Metropolitan Water District customer projects. As I had mentioned, I discussed earlier in the action item, the first one is a WB23A new service connection, but I do want to highlight the project for WB30 and 31. This is there were 2 manholes that were actually owned by Metropolitan Water District that Golden State replaced those manhole covers, and they were not approved by Metropolitan Water District. And so Metropolitan Water District, after reviewing it, decided that they would like us to enter into an agreement for these modifications that Golden State implemented. And so we will be coming back to the board with a recommendation and provide these agreements for the district's review and approval as well. So I just wanted to highlight that specifically. For the Title 22 Purveyor Service Program, the third quarter sampling was complete, and for the brewer desalter, there was no production. So next slide, please. This is an update for the recycled water distribution system activities. This is the work that was implemented by Inframark. That month, we mainly focused on, or Inframark focused on taking water distribution samples in regards to the Hyperion upset to really monitor the water quality throughout the distribution. So you can see that there were a large number of water samples taken that month. In addition, as Susanna had mentioned, Inframark also conducted what we call spot chlorinations, where they injected chlorine for a short amount of time to help improve the water quality for specific areas. So that's what's highlighted under customer service response. They did that on 18 separate occasions. They implemented spot chlorinations in Hermosa Beach, Inglewood, as well as Carson. And they also, in addition to all that, responded to underground service alerts, a total of 749 for that month. And below on that same page, there's photographs of the spot chlorination activities that was implemented by Inframark. Next slide, please. And moving on to our customer development, customer support for new recycled water connections, our staff is continuing to conduct site inspections with the Department of Public Health at the LA Stadium, the Hollywood Park Retail. This portion of development is on the corner of Prairie and Century. So as you can see in these photographs, this is a new irrigation system that will utilize recycled water. This will be a commercial area, and it is estimated to be connected in April of 2022. Next slide, please. Another new recycled water site that our staff is working with is the Torrance Technology Center, called the Phase 2. This is the former Toyota North American headquarters site that's being redeveloped. And so this site will have 4 new connections. This is also a commercial type office setting, and recycled water will be used for perimeter of the buildings and in the parking lots. And it's anticipated that the irrigation for the site will be connected by the end of this year. And in addition, here you can see some photographs of that recent inspections of the irrigation system. Next slide, please. And then we also are continuing to work with Topgolf next to the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility. They have already completed the construction of the new irrigation system for the golf course. They're still working on the irrigation system that will be next to the driving range. And so again, staff is working with the Department of Public Health to conduct these inspections. They are also anticipated to be connected by the end of this year. Next slide. And then finally, another recycled water site modification site. This is the El Camino College in Torrance. Again, this site currently uses recycled water. Unfortunately, at one of their baseball fields, they're going to be installing artificial turf. And so any modifications that are made, again, to an existing recycled water site and modifications to their potable water system have to be reviewed and approved as well. And so staff is also working with them and the Department of Public Health to ensure these modifications are made safely, and it's anticipated that that would be completed by the end of this year. That concludes my update, and I'd also be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee or the board?
None here. Thank you very much.
Any other board members?
No?
Okay, so I think we're done with the Information calendar. Next item is closed session. We don't have a closed session item. So we'll move on to director's comments and future agenda items. Any comments? Director Williams?
No, thank you.
Director Deere?
I commend the staff for a fine report, a set of reports, and that the chairman only took 2 hours for the meeting.
Thank you. Director Gray? Okay. If there's no further comments, then I would like to piggyback on Director Deere's comments about that it took 2 hours, it being just a minute after 6 now. We will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.